Sometimes it's just really hard to make so many cups of tea when people are over. So one of the things that's really great is if you can have hot cider or hot toddy and it's just brewing away and the house smells so good and you answer the door in your bare feet, because you just want to be an accessible hostess. And they can come in over the stove and help themselves. You'll have your mugs out and everything. And one of the things you can do to make your life so much easier is the day before, go ahead and put out those mugs on a tray. Just thinking ahead of how you can make it easier to be a hostess, because one of the things you want to do as a hostess is just not be frenzied. You want to be at peace, and that peace will transcend your guest's experience. Hello, how are you? Welcome to my channel. My name is Cheer Denise. It's Friday. It's the Friday News Roundup, and boy, did we have an absolute rager of a story that came out yesterday, and I was too busy talking about Virginia Giuffre's book to even know it was in the news. I was finishing reading the book, and then I was filming the episode, and then I was editing the episode, and when I was finally done and I'd finally posted, I was like, what's been going on today? Only Prince Andrew having everything stripped from him. Now, didn't we call it right here? Didn't I say that's what needed to happen? That's what everyone's been saying. It's not like I was like the lone crier in the wilderness. Everyone's been saying that he needed to have his titles stripped from him. And now he effectively has. And not just the Duke of York and the, Garter of whatever. He has to go by Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. A regular old geezer with a first and last name just like the rest of us. And now he's being thrown out of Royal Lodge. And he has to go find his own private accommodations, which shouldn't be hard for him since he has so many places to live around the world, as we found out when we read Entitled, the book all about the rise and fall. But didn't I say that book was just the end of the beginning of the story? Because we are now going to see the rest of Andrew's story. The part of the story where he's just an everyman, where he is no longer a prince and able to use all of his titles. And this is completely unprecedented. I don't know if I am even aware of one single time in which the monarchy stripped one of their own of their titles. Now, admittedly, I don't know every story about every royal, but this is very strange. And up until now, they have allowed Andrew to say that any degradation of status was his personal choice, because out of the overflow of his nobility, out of the overflow of his honorability, he decided it would be best, because he cares so much about his family and of others, that even though he was completely innocent, he felt it necessary to relinquish the use of titles. Not relinquish the title, just wasn't going to use it anymore. Well, now he doesn't even get to do that. And now King Charles has issued a statement saying he doesn't have the titles, he doesn't have the styles, and he doesn't have a house. This is what was officially put out yesterday.
Prince Andrew will now be known as Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. His lease on Royal Lodge has, to date, provided him with legal protection to continue in residence. Formal notice has now been served to surrender the lease, and he will move to alternative private accommodation. These censors are deemed necessary, notwithstanding the fact that he continues to deny the allegations against him. Their Majesties wish to make clear that their thoughts and utmost sympathies have been and will remain with the victims and survivors of any and all forms of abuse.
Scathing. Now, here's the thing. The palace has had this in mind, obviously, for a minute now. And they even tried to orchestrate a little media theater, because King Charles had been away and they wanted to have some footage of King Charles going to Royal Lodge, and nobody was going to know what they said. But it was supposed to be a good visual for the people, like the king is going to come and talk to his wayward brother. Let's hope that everything we want said is being said. But it became such a circus with so many people showing up and the helicopters overhead of Royal Lodge, and it became such a fiasco that the palace called off the meeting. It was like, abort, abort! The king's not stopping by Royal Lodge on his way home from his trip, okay? So it was a little bit annoying to the media who'd shown up for this great shot of the king coming in to really have words with his brother. They botched that one. But the king did go out, of course, and put out his statement saying, it's done. It's over. And I'm saying it. And that's the big part of the story. It's the king saying it to his brother. It's no longer giving him the ability to act like he's still in control. Now, obviously, we know that never at one point was any of this his idea, but they allowed him the honor of pretending that he was going to relinquish it out of the generosity of his good soul. No more, So that was a blessed bit of news. And, especially coming on the heels of having read Virginia's book, it really is the cherry on top of the whole story, because that story's horrible. If you were with us yesterday, I think that we dealt with the material in a way that was very accessible. So if you were worried about being traumatized by the book, I think the retelling of it and the discussion of it was accessible to everybody. But it was still a really sad, horrible story. And to see that the prince has finally had to relinquish the power that gave him the ability to hurt her and hurt her for her whole life, not just at the beginning with the actual abuse, but then in the denial of it. Nobody is denying, even from his own family, that he did this. Now, they do not acknowledge his sin in the statement. You heard it. They're not saying, and we know. But you wouldn't take your brother's things from him, his title, his honor, his styles, if you thought he was completely innocent. If in your mind it was just too wild to imagine. Not my brother, If there was this idea that Andrew was not even capable of it, you wouldn't feel that you needed to make him a public example just to kind of calm the riots. You'd just be like, too bad. Because it's not like this is the first scandal to have ever hit the royal family. They are well within their ability to paper over scandal. But even they were like, you scumbag, be gone, get, So I have to say, I feel great. I feel like this is a beautiful ending to the reading from yesterday. A beautiful ending from the Virginia story. And this is, obviously, the beautiful thing would have been if it had never happened to her. But it did. And to see somebody actually paying with actual consequences is beautiful. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing. Obviously, Andrew's not going to prison yet. But honestly, taking away from him his identity, who he had placed all his worth in, to strip him of that and to make him feel worthless, honestly, is there a worse punishment for him? I mean, putting him in prison and everything would be terrible, but it's almost worse to be allowed to wander in the world, but you're not who you used to be. You're alive but dead. I mean, honestly, that sounds worse. Well, it's not worse than prison. That's not a true statement. It's not worse than prison, but it's pretty dang bad to have to be who you are, but not anymore. And all of your families turn their back on you, but you're still free, but not free. It's a weird place to be. And I don't know how he's going to handle that. Meanwhile, by the way, let's remind ourselves that Sarah Ferguson has also lost her place at Royal Lodge, because, of course, that's where she was squatting for these many years. But also, what's going to go on with the daughters? I haven't heard a whole lot about that. To be honest, I haven't really looked into what's going on with Beatrice and Eugenie. Those two just don't excite much interest in me. I feel bad for them that their parents are who they are. I just don't have a lot of hope for who they'll be. Probably because, isn't it Eugenie that's really attached herself to Harry? So I feel like her judgment is skewed considerably. But I don't know. Are they going to be allowed to be called princesses anymore? How can you be a princess if your dad ain't no prince? You know what I mean? How's it going to work out for you? Are you going to be downgraded in some way? I just don't know how you retain a title that is hereditary if your dad's been stripped of his. Now, this is unprecedented circumstances, No, perhaps they'll make up a new rule for them. They didn't go out and hurt anybody that we know of. So, should they bear the consequences of their father, or should they be allowed to retain their title? But consequences of one's actions do splatter out to those around you. And it may be that he's cost his whole family everything that they had. Who knows? I'm sorry, I should have looked that up before we talked. But I know you guys know. Leave something in the comments. Are they princesses still? What are we going to do about that? Do we know? Okay. Speaking of the degeneracy of the royal family, let's pan on over to Harry and Meghan, shall we? They had a tough week. The business at the Dodgers Stadium. All right, she's constantly walking around in that LA baseball cap. She really thinks it makes her one of the people. And they go to the game. They are playing against Canada's Blue Jays, okay, because it's the World Series. Who should Harry be rooting for in this scenario? He's not an American. He hasn't taken his citizenship. He's just hanging out over here. And it would appear to me that if he really was still kind of part of his royal family, since he can't seem to give up using his titles, it seems like he should be rooting for Canada's Blue Jays, right? I mean, that team is like, pays homage to his father in a certain way. No, he's over there rooting for the LA Dodgers, and they lost. But people said that when they got there was lots of booing when they were announced. Interestingly, on the readout at the bottom of the screen, it said Prince Harry and Meghan. I think they might have even called her Meghan Markle. They don't care about titles over there. They're here to play ball. But she posted a bunch of stuff about it on her social media, and she's like, about last night. And I was like, is she going to address the booing? She did not. She just had lots of screenshots of them. They had great seats, right? Obviously, they got upstairs in the box where, they're over there eating hot dogs. And, if you've ever been to a baseball game and you get to be in one of the suites, it's a pretty excellent experience. I one time won an experience at a baseball game, thought I didn't like baseball, loved that. Mostly it was the food. But there she is giggling over eating a hot dog. Like he really caught her at something. Uh-oh, no. Don't watch me eating this hot dog. Oh, stop it, Harry. Just stop. She's just so stupid. Eat your dang hot dog, Oh, that's what you're going to do at a baseball game, Lord knows she probably threw it in the trash as soon as he'd caught her accidentally sneaking in a naughty food. I can't. She always acts so weird about the food of the people. Like when she talks about eating one of those apple pies from a drive-thru. That's how she used to celebrate. And she just always acts so like she's really dropping you a couple of gems when she tells you that sometimes on busy nights she makes like frozen chicken tenders for the kids, broccoli, and some of that Annie's organic mac and cheese, if you can believe it. I just can't with her constantly placating us with these little stories, constantly telling us what she thinks we want to hear. Like we want to hear that she like gets giddy about eating a hot dog. Can you believe it? And every single shot they have of them, she's like laughing her head off or guiltily giggling about some little silliness. Like, here I am at a baseball game with my husband. Are we so normal? It's so American of us to go on date night to a baseball game. What's strange is that when she's trying to do all the things to make herself look so normal, she just looks so abnormal. But then she'll do things that I would consider pretty low class, and she never comments on it. And I'm wondering if it's just that she doesn't realize that it's so low class, that she forgets to comment on it and act like it was a choice she intended to make for your benefit. And what I mean is that every time I see that little child of theirs, why is that child always in pajamas? Why is nobody brushing her hair? For example, we saw a bunch of pictures. I think last Sunday she posted, Sunday fun day, and they're at some pumpkin patch and they're carving their pumpkins. And she posts a reel about their good times, that it's like cut of all these pictures. Of course, all the kids are from behind, but she's got to get in the fact that they are there. But why is poor little Lily always in some Kmart cast-offs? These clothes are old and junky. It's like, do you shop for this kid at the bottom of the thrift store barrel? Why is she always in these ratty big box store clothes? Look, I've bought my kids lots of stuff at big box stores, okay? They're great play clothes because if they tear them up, get them dirty, whatever, I'm not condemning. My whole life, everything I bought growing up was from Walmart, okay? I'm not condemning that. And if that's what you can afford, like, I'm so glad that big box stores are getting cuter styles, But why does it seem like they never find that cute section for Lily? She's always in these dingy, junky pajamas. She's always in these like stretch pants and synthetic material clothes. And again, for the rest of us, we're just doing the best we can with our kids, okay? And what we can afford is what we can afford, I got no problem. Every single thing I wear that you guys see me wear are hand-me-downs from friends who have given me clothes. Like, I am telling you, right, this shirt, hand-me-down. Literally yesterday I'm wearing a shirt my husband gave me. I am telling you right now, I am not opposed to wearing what you have to wear. But I'm just saying, as a duchess, as somebody who clearly thinks about what she wears and puts quite a bit of money into her outfits, why can't we get Lily some clothes that look like you care about her? Comb the child's hair. Ever heard of, braiding your kid's hair, putting it in a ponytail, like doing something with the child's hair? Why is she so disheveled and unkempt? I'm like very upset about that for her sake. Because her mama thought about what she was going to wear. She thought, I'm going to a farm. I'm going to put on my little barn jacket, my hunter boots. I'm going to be the cutest. But she didn't think about putting the child in some clothes. She's still in what she went to bed in. That, pet peeve of mine. Please put your kids in clothes when they go outside. Don't leave them in their pajamas. Just don't. Do them the respect of clothing them for the day. Brush their hair, okay? You don't have to do any kind of fancy style. Just run a comb through it, for God's sake. Show your kid a little respect for their humanity and let them go outside with socks that match, shoes on the right feet, hair combed, clothes without stains, things that aren't their pajamas, But no, she can't be bothered. Anyway, she's really busy posting about our family and the fun holiday times they're having together because she wants to lay out for you that the holiday collection has come. She launched that on the 28th after telling us every single time we were on social media, save the date, save the date, save the date, save the date. And this really sort of tacky, sepia-colored, out-of-date type of advertising. I don't know. I just don't get this filter that she has on everything to make it, I don't know, was it supposed to be like feel cozy? I'm not sure. Anyway, she's rolled out what appears to be somebody's fundraising catalog. I'm serious. Somebody said that to me in the comments, and I was like, I have never in all my born days heard something that is so exactly spot on. That's why I'm annoyed with everything she sells, because it's literally the inside of a child's elementary fundraising catalog. Okay? This is what the poor little kid shows you when they come knocking on your door. Do you want to buy wrapping paper, jam, cookie dough? Like, it's stuff like that. And that is what she's rolling out for her holiday collections. More of the same junk, okay? Do I need a fruit spread collection to send to Aunt May? No, Aunt May doesn't want it, and I don't want to spend what it's going to cost. Look at these prices, okay? What in the world am I doing spending that much money? $48 on fruit spread? Because it comes in keepsake boxing. That's the other thing that's so crazy. Perhaps since she loves to rattle on about how poor she was, were they over there saving the country crock Tupperware? Is she just like, does she feel like that's part of your experience in purchasing something, that it needs to come in something I can then keep later to, double use? She really loves that point. She loves to act like we're all keeping jars and plastic containers and boxes for whatever. I'm like, what hoarder mentality are you coming from? Not gonna lie, I do buy this kind of jam and I do save the jars because they work as great drinking glasses. And since everyone around here is breaking everything all the time, let's just use jam jars. Let's just save ourselves the effort of being annoyed when people break good things. So I do understand to a certain extent keeping some things, but to make a product and like the big selling point, the reason you're paying extra is because you get to use the junk afterwards to display around your house. Like, what? Come on. You can't build in that intentionality of somebody, hopefully, cross your fingers, keeping the cardboard box as a reason why they need to pay an extra $25. I don't need $25 worth of cardboard box around here, okay? Amazon's doing me just fine in that department. Anyway, she has gone out to talk about some of the things, and most of it is just repackaging of what she's already selling. A collection of jams, a new kind of honey. This time she's got some sage honey. I guess that's supposed to be for turkey basting or something. And then she's also decided to include in the holiday collection some hot cider kits and some hot toddy kits. And she goes on to, I don't even know where it was that she was talking. I have not listened to this whole interview, but I saw this clip. And she goes on to talk about, sometimes it's just really hard to make so many cups of tea when people are over. So one of the things that's really great is if you can have hot cider or hot toddy and it's just brewing away and the house smells so good and you answer the door in your bare feet, because you just want to be an accessible hostess. And they can come in over to the stove and help themselves. You'll have your mugs out and everything. And one of the things you can do to make your life so much easier is the day before, go ahead and put out those mugs on a tray. Just thinking ahead of how you can make it easier to be a hostess, because one of the things you want to do as a hostess is just not be frenzied. You want to be at peace, and that peace will transcend your guest's experience. So instead of getting worked up about all those cups of tea, you go ahead and have that hot toddy going. And they can help themselves. And it's just going to elevate the experience, bring so much joy, so much holiday warmth. If you can just have that already going. And that's her sales pitch for this junk she's over there. You know, you don't need a kit to make some hot cider. But it's all just so unoriginal. I think that's the other thing. I was like really thinking, oh, save the date, save the date. Is she going to have something good, something delicious to throw your way? How could she? All she has is pantry staples. You know, it's nothing exciting. It's nothing that's going to go bad as it has to sit there in her warehouse as no one buys it. Imagine working for this lady. Can you even? Well, the people who work for her cannot imagine it any longer. Her 10th head of communications just quit. A woman by the name of Emily Robinson was Meghan's literal 10th head of communications. And the lady's just like, I can't anymore. And she was with Meghan during With Love Meghan, and she just quit. So if we're annoyed just watching Meghan talk about lay those mugs out the day before so you can just have this peaceful mindset. Like if that's driving you crazy from this distance, can you imagine being Emily? Having Meghan talk to you about all things as though she just had this searing moment of brilliance and she's going to lay it on you. And aren't you lucky to hear it? And it's stuff like put out stuff you can put out the day before so you're not overwhelmed when you have guests over. Answer the door in your bare feet so you make your guests feel like they're just one of the household. Don't forget your apron. Put your apron on. Please. I do wear an apron. I legitimately do, and I bet a lot of you guys do too. But the thing is, we're not doing it to play act. It's just, I don't want to spatter my clothes, and also the pockets are handy. You know, but she does everything with such a mindset of performance. You know, back to her and Harry over at that ball game, the entire experience wasn't a date night with Harry. She needed it as content for her little Instagram, and it was all about all these moments she got to catch with Harry and her having this like cute little date night. Have a date night with your dang husband and maybe don't post about it. What about that revolutionary concept? You know, everyone's booing them and she's just over there like, ha ha ha. You know, both of them try to laugh it off, which honestly, what else are you going to do? Side note though, you guys, do you sometimes have a hard time believing that people are booing? I mean, I believe people are booing, but like when you listen to it, does it sometimes feel like I'm reaching for a sound? Because it's a lot of screaming at these events. Like when Taylor Swift was booed a while back, and everyone's like, Taylor Swift was booed. And it's like, but was she? I can't tell. Everyone's screaming. Are they booing? Are they cheering? Are they excited? I don't know. So everyone's like, they got booed. I don't know, did they? But what I do know with 100% certainty, it was performance, performance, performance. And none of it felt genuine to me. Also, why did they come wearing matching outfits? Black pants, white shirts, black jackets? Is that weird? I don't go on matching date nights with my husband. Like, we don't coordinate our outfits on date night where let's go together as twins. Oh, I got to move on. Oh, but before I do, can I just say that this is very, very royal adjacent. But you all know Lady C. Oh, we all know Lady C. And you'll recall that a couple of years ago, she really jumped down my throat because I covered her book and had the audacity to question a certain passage. She claimed a certain thing had happened in this bit of film, and I watched the bit of film and thought, did it? I don't know. It's hard to say. And then she just came after me like a spider monkey. Crazy. Well, she's not doing too good. She fell down and broke her hip. And no, she didn't break her hip. I'm sorry. Her hips are doing fine. Her hip bone broke her pelvis when she fell. And she doesn't feel like she's being treated with the utmost respect. She feels that the NHS is not doing their damnest by her. And she feels like they're trying to kill her. Straight up. Trying to kill her. And she's worried about all those people who don't have a profile like her. You know? How are they being treated? She looks fresh as a daisy, let me just say. So I'm glad that somebody was there to do her makeup for her. I think that they should have stopped the filming when she got to this part of her complaints.
I am being tortured every single time I move. It's torment. They literally can't move me. I pointed out to them on Sunday, I said, this needs to be done as quickly as possible because I can't poo because they can't move me to put anything underneath me. They can't wipe me up if I poop. I said, it needs to be done as quickly as possible. So Thereafter, I can poo.
Oh, Lady C. Let's not say that. Okay, I kept seeing this going around, and I just need to ask, when did collective blindness hit all of us? I am strongly concerned about what is happening with the visuals. Is this part of long haul COVID? Why are we all talking about this like it's a thing? Recently, old Sydney Sweeney with her swinging breasts was compared to some unearthed photographs of Hillary Clinton. Now, I think the thing that is slamming everyone to the floor isn't that they look alike, which is suddenly the claims. Everyone's like, look how Hillary Clinton and Sydney Sweeney look exactly alike. I think we're all just amazed that there's an attractive photo of Hillary Clinton, because in these pictures, she is attractive, you know? And some of us have seen some old pictures of her back in the day, and we're getting this kind of situation going on. Somebody should have reminded her that those pants were not the ones to wear when you decided to have no knees together. KT, ladies, KT. But she has had pictures of herself going around before, and honestly, I know I've seen these pictures before, so I wouldn't say anybody unearthed them out of some kind of a vault. But somebody posted these and was like, look how she looked exactly like Sydney Sweeney. And Sydney Sweeney right now is having a moment because people cannot get over her breasts. And she is letting them just be large and in charge. You know, no one's going to deny that they aren't magnificent. But at the same time, she is just letting them be all that she is known for at this point. So she's quite the sex symbol. So then to compare Hillary Clinton, who I would not say has ever been a sex symbol, to Sydney Sweeney, it just really feels like we're trying to make something happen. It is not happening. But also, if they legitimately looked alike, if she legitimately looked like Sydney Sweeney in her youth, I could say it, you know, I could admit that, but she doesn't. She looks like Hillary Clinton's younger self. She looks really pretty in these pictures, but she doesn't look like Sydney Sweeney. Then we had people coming out being like, no, it's not Sydney Sweeney. She doesn't look like Sydney Sweeney. And I'm like, finally. They're like, she looks like Sabrina Carpenter. Do you guys have eyes in your head? I mean, seriously, when did your sickness befall you? What happened to you? You can't, what? This is like saying that a cat and a dog are similar, and they're indistinguishable because they both have tails, fur, and walk on four legs. A cat is a cat and a dog is a dog. And that's Hillary Clinton, and that's Sydney Sweeney, and that is Sabrina Carpenter, and they don't look anything alike, apart from the fact that they're blonde, white females. And to have this whole internet conversation about it, there's no debate. They don't look alike. Moving on. We will move on to a new topic of Pamela Anderson, okay? Another person who has lots of chit-chat going on about her online. Now, we all know that Pamela Anderson, back in her day, was quite the sex symbol herself, you know. The Sydney Sweeney of her time. And, you know, I don't blame a person for not wanting to go into their later years still made up like that. It'd be inappropriate. It'd be weird. You don't need to, you know. No need. So when she decided to come out with her baby bangs and her no makeup, it was like, you know what? A time and a place for all things. If that's where you want to settle on your final look, we're happy for you. We're glad that you don't feel like you have to put on a face of makeup to be accepted by the world. Praise be, you know? Would that we all felt so comfortable, right? That's where I landed. But she still was dressed in beautiful clothes. She still looked delightful. And that was part of the charm of it, was that she still was going out and presenting herself so beautifully. And she still was choosing not to have a face full of makeup, but it was almost like it was a very glamorous, very sort of clean beauty look. Because it's not like she had no makeup on, come on. She had something on, but she just wasn't overemphasizing things. Okay. And that's where we felt that we were settling with Pamela Anderson. But now we're seeing Pamela coming out in this. And this. And why this? Now, this last picture of her in a Louis Vuitton ad, I literally don't know if that's AI. It's hard to imagine that this was anybody's choice on purpose. Because clearly we're going for a very 80s look here. Okay, I can get behind the vibe of this. But very 80s would be like some extreme makeup in this situation. And since she doesn't do makeup, it's hard to know if somebody just put these things together. And I looked to see if this was an AI image, and I could not confirm. But given the fact that she's going around in this kind of weird 1930s grandma look, it makes me believe that she could be talked into whatever was happening here. It's a rough look, you guys. You know, again, people are free to do what they will. You know, you do you. If you want to go without makeup, that's fine. If you want to take it one step further and wear these weird hats and these tablecloth dresses and these strange socks, be my guest, I guess. You do you. If that's where you want to settle, you do it. But I just feel like we can admit that it's gotten kooky looking at this point. The vibe is off. I was willing to accept the other one as something that it could possibly be done, and perhaps more people should embrace it. But let's not embrace this last iteration. Unless you really want to. Another story that's been big this last week, and probably into last week too. Our eyes do not deceive us. Do you remember when we thought that Katy Perry and Justin Trudeau might actually be a thing? They are. And we'd wondered about it a while ago when they went on this long date that went on into the night that included walking her dog and having a nightcap and after dinner and it's like, that really feels like a long time. And initially there was talk from the spokespeople, Katie's just real good friends with Justin. And we're like, well, they probably do run in the same circles. So people tried to say that that was all that it was. Well, the people in charge of her PR, the rest of us were like, it's a date. And then we see them on a yacht doing this business. Okay. And then they've come out and they're in a relationship. And she thinks he's like really smart. This is a person who called herself an astronaut after barely leaving the atmosphere. And then she came back down and kissed the ground like she'd really gone on a journey and came out and told us that now she knew what love was and that you're not even going to understand love until you get to space. So the fact that she would fall into Justin Trudeau's arms and call him like the smartest man she's ever met tracks. And it remains to be seen what'll happen here. You know, is he even straight? It's hard to know. And as one person said, he's probably just doing it because the kids think it's pretty cool that he's dating some kind of pop star. Although I'm like, if the kids are plugged in at all, I'm sure they wished it was a different pop star. But it remains to be seen what will happen here. I'm sure it's just a dalliance. I mean, I don't see this going anywhere into the distance. She's hurt and wants to bounce back from her situation with Orlando. Justin Trudeau is just excited about doing anything other than his responsibilities. So, I imagine that it's just sort of something to do. You know, we don't need to get ourselves too worked up about it. Although, if I were anybody in Canada, like, it would just confirm to me that all the pain that I experienced under his rule and reign was accurate. I mean, obviously I would know that, but then as he like leaves office and continues to make such poor judgments, I'd be like, I mean, anybody who tried to support him, look what he's doing now. You know, anybody who thought that he was the greatest of all time, if there was anybody like that, look at the decisions he's making now. Katy Perry? I mean, it would just, honestly, it might be cathartic that I'd be like, no, see, I was right all along. This person was no good as a prime minister, and these are the judgments he's making. So anybody who wanted to say that he was up on his stuff and he was really trying to help Canada, he's not even trying to help himself. Look who he's dating. Look who he's bringing into his life. Okay. Speaking of other singers who are having a rough go of it, Nelly Furtado. Now, you know that she was a singer like back in the day and had a couple of hits. I wouldn't say a couple. She was well known. Then she disappeared for a while. And then she came back and she had a different physique. She'd put on a considerable amount of weight and people commented on it. Now, I don't think that we need to go around commenting on people's weight as just like the most interesting thing about them, because it hardly is. But there was a great bit of difference between people's recollection of her and the reality that now stood before them. So there was a lot of people commenting on it, and that would have been painful. But I also feel like, Nelly, you're wearing things you could have worn before. But if you are the sort of person who's going to be hurt by a comment about your weight, don't wear things that are going to expose the difference between the before and the current. You know, if you don't want people to comment on your weight, then don't wear things that show that you've changed. You know, if that's going to hurt you, don't give people all of these chances to say painful things. Now, she probably thought that it was their responsibility to be decent people and she could wear what she wanted to wear. But unfortunately, the world is hardly filled with responsible people. And they're going to say something if it's such a big difference, because it is a big difference. It's not like she gained 5 pounds and it's those hateful sorts of tabloid articles that show somebody leaving lunch and being like, is she pregnant? You know, obviously it's more weight gain than that. And I'm sure she just got tired of everybody talking about that. Like, nobody was like, oh, she's back, she's singing music I like. Meh, 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 meh. You know, it was hardly going to be that conversation because people are shallow. But also, what has happened in your life that there has been such a personal change? Because such radical shifts in weight are typically indicative of some kind of big personality or lifestyle shift. Maybe you're deeply depressed or discouraged about something, so you're not taking care of yourself. You're not going to the gym, so you're going to gain some weight. Maybe you're really happy and in a great relationship, and, you know, slaving at the gym is your last priority, you know. So, you know, now you've kind of settled into your relationship and you guys are eating more and delicious food together, and it just ends up, a lot of people gain weight in relationships. I know I have. But is it a possibility that anybody was maybe concerned about, like, what happened? Why the substantial weight gain? Anyway, she's decided she's done. You know, you all weren't grateful for the fact that she had come out with new music and new songs. And all you guys want to do is talk ugly about her, you know? So fine, whatever. She's going to take her ball and go home. So she's not going to do any music, and we ought to feel really bad about that. I feel bad if she feels sad. Because it really stings to have people comment on your weight, especially if it's not like she couldn't have noticed. It's not like when you gained a few pounds and you've been like putzing around the house yourself and you haven't noticed, but then you go and you meet up with someone who hasn't seen you in 10 years and like, whoa, you know. I'm sure she's noticed, but it's hurtful to have other people notice. You know, you just want people to accept you for who you are and not have all these negative things to say. But when you're on such a big platform, probably her own friends and family might not say anything, but when you're on a platform where nobody really feels like they have to watch their words because there aren't going to be any consequences, no one's coming after them for calling you fat, then you kind of put yourself in a scenario where you're going to be hurt. So, I don't know. To leave music entirely because you're mad that people noticed that you'd gained weight seems a little bit of an overreaction. Especially because you came out wearing outfits that didn't show you were ashamed of it. So to now act like you are ashamed of it seems an intensely interesting thing to do. Feels more like she's trying to make everybody else feel bad they hurt her feelings. And I just think if you wanted to come out and wear those clothes and you were embracing your new body, so embrace it. Don't let other people decide how you feel about it. But if you were kind of embarrassed and you were waiting for other people's validation, for people to celebrate you and be like, you know, beauty comes in all sizes, or whatever it was she was needing the public to say about her, well, that was the wrong plan, you know, because you're going to get all kinds of feedback. And if you need your validation to come from others in order for you to love yourself, that's a plan for self-destruction, you know. So hopefully she can sort out what it is that she feels about herself, divorced from other people's opinion. Speaking about people who need to keep their opinions to themselves, let's talk about Gwyneth Paltrow. Gwyneth Paltrow has thrown what I would consider some major shade, and I do not think that this was a complimentary statement. She said that old Timothée, you know, the one who's dating Kylie Jenner, is, well, punk rock because he's dating a single mom. Well, you know, Kylie's got a bunch of kids. And for Timothée to be dating her, Gwyneth thought that she ought to comment on that and talk about, like, wow, you could have been dating anybody, but you chose Kylie with a bunch of kids. You know, you could have dated somebody without all those strings attached, but I guess you chose this hussy with a bunch of daddyless kids, you know, like that's kind of her tone. And I know that she's trying to act like people are acting like it's a compliment. I'm like, how is that a compliment? You know, I mean, if he likes Kylie Jenner, I don't get that. But if he likes her, just side note, the reason I don't get it is he's wanting to be taken as a serious actor. He's made that abundantly clear. And it just feels like if you want to be taken seriously, why would you date the most unserious person in the neighborhood? But he's been dating her rather lackluster, if you ask me. I mean, he never seems happy about it. Every time you see them together, she's pawing all over him. And he's like, anyway, what's going on Instagram? You know, he's just super checked out. And so I don't know if Gwyneth is trying to embarrass him. Maybe she thinks he shouldn't be in the relationship, so she's trying to embarrass him so he'll get out of the relationship. Because it seems like the two of them had a conversation together in which she was almost seeming like she was interested in old Timothée. And then Timothée told her that he was with Kylie. And she's like, oh, Kylie, that single mom? Okay, well, that's pretty punk rocky you. But it seemed like her response to him came from more of a shock of like, what? Why are you with, oh, okay, I'm going to try to say something positive here. But it's Gwyneth Paltrow. She can't say anything positive without tearing you down. Okay, so here's my last story for you guys. Do you remember little Frankie Muniz and Hilary Duff? Obviously, they were both on the Disney Channel, and the two of them were on her show together. She had the Hilary Duff show, and he was on it. But he was starting to break out and start doing his own shows. Now, it had appeared that he and Hilary were really good friends when they were on the show, and then suddenly he stopped talking to her and has not spoken to her to this day. And there were some questions about why that was, because they had seemed like they got along back in the day. So what's going on? Well, he just recently came out and told the story, and it's all because of Hilary Duff's crazy mom. Now, Hollywood is full of momagers. It's full of like overbearing stage moms who just could never make it on their own. So they're going to, bring the life out of their children trying to live through them. Well, Hilary Duff's mom was no different. And so Frankie was going to be in this new movie called Agent Cody Brown. Was going to go, and he was filming in Canada. Well, he's in his dressing room at the Hilary Duff show. And Hilary's mom comes waddling in and starts talking to him and asks him, what's he going to be up to? What does he have any projects going on? Frankie says he does. And he's kind of vague about it. And he says it's going to start filming soon. And she's like, oh, is there a female role in that? Is there, any part for Hilary? And he's like, I don't know. He doesn't really talk much about it. Now, he, as the lead of that movie, had been given in his contract the right to pick out the female star with him. And he had in mind who he wanted it to be. But they hadn't finished casting for the movie yet. But, like I said, he'd been given the right to help pick out and finalize who it was going to be. The literal next day on set, he's in his dressing room. Who should come knocking on his door, wanting to hang out with him again? Hilary's mom. And she's like, Frankie, good news. We're going to be with you in British Columbia this summer. How great is that? We're going to have so much fun on that set, aren't we? And he's like, what are you talking about? And she's like, last night we signed the contract. Hilary is going to be your female lead. Isn't that great news? And he did not think that it was great news. Not because he didn't like Hilary, but because in his mind it was going to be somebody else. And also he had been given in his contract the right to finalize on who the female would be. And it wasn't Hilary that he wanted. And he was just mad that they had circumvented him and that the mom had gone sniffing around to see if she could hitch Hilary's star to Frankie's new role. And it was going to be his movie. And I'm sure that there was a part of him that just really wanted to break out of this mold as Hilary's co-star. Just kind of like, I want to leave the Hilary show behind and I want to go and do my own thing. And to be able to act with a different female actress would mean that it was his own thing. He was breaking away from the attachment there. But no, Hilary's mom circumvents him and gets them to do a rush job so Hilary can be part of it. And of course, Hilary was part of it. She was the lead. And from that day forward, he never spoke to her again. Like, he was so pissed off that, crazy mom just comes in there and takes away from him this opportunity for him to build his own career and just shoving herself in there. Like, he acknowledges that probably wasn't the right decision. It's not Hilary's fault. He always liked Hilary. She was always really nice. And he's been very clear about that. But he was really mad with the mom. And of course, with Hilary comes the mom. So he probably was just like, you know what? Screw both of y'all. I'll get out of here. And he just kind of had an attitude about it. So I thought that was kind of an interesting little insight into the world of Hollywood and also the world of those momagers and those stage moms who are just so difficult to get along with. Yuck. Well, that's all we have time for today. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. I always enjoy it. I will see you guys on Monday. I don't know what we're going to talk about until I find another book, but we'll come up with something. Have a wonderful weekend. If you are doing trick-or-treating tonight with your kids, have a great time. And I hope everybody is safe and has a lovely time and enjoys all the candy. The best part of it is the sorting of the candy. Am I right? I plan on taking a heavy tax for my children tonight, and it's going to be great times. Hope you guys have a great time too. Bye.